All right, so for today, we are going to talk about the last section of the automations. So in the previous sessions, we have talked about all the triggers, everything that initiates the automations. We have talked about the actions, what would the automations do once they are triggered. And today we are going to talk about one of the recipes within the OverPower Marketing automation tab. So when you click on create, let me just share my screen so I can show you what I'm talking about. All right, perfect. So within your sub account, you would go onto the left hand side, click on automations. This would open the workflow list. From within the workflow list, you would click on create a workflow and select a recipe. Now, this recipe is important because the thing that we are going to explain to you is IVR. And what IVR does is it's like an automated receptionist or an intelligent receptionist who would take all the inbound calls for you. So this is the recipe. This IVR workflow streamlines communication, allowing callers to navigate through service options, leave messages, and connect with your team effortlessly. Um, do we have a question? Yeah, cool.
I do not, but it seems Mr. Howell does.
Oh,
I was
sorry.
I was just, I was just going to say I believe it interactive voice response.
Yeah, it is.
So
And look at that, mystery left. Okay, so moving on. So with when you go over here, you'll find many recipes that you can look into and you can experiment on your own. But for today, we saved this topic for the last session since it's a very special automation that we would like to talk about. So what this recipe does is it will take all the incoming calls from you, from your plate, and then handle it by itself. And what it does, it segments the callers based on which action they. All right. It will segment the callers based on which button they press. So I don't. I'm hoping that everyone has received or everyone has called into those numbers where they say press one for English, press two for Spanish, press three for this, press four for that. And what is the basic function of an IVR, and that is what today Cohen will be explaining to you, and he would be giving you, sharing you examples with it. And if you have any questions or any concerns, please raise your hands and let us know about it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Cohen. Over to you.
Thank you, Mustafa. Let me share my screen real quick. As Mustafa was saying, we are going over IVR, the section in the workflows, its triggers, its different actions, and its different purposes and ways that you can use it. So here I have one of the default recipes for IVR you can use for your business. Is very much a blank slate and can be added onto it, but is a very simple system to work with in the workflows and does not take much training at all. So starting off with the trigger, start IVR trigger. This basically what it does is it essentially starts the workflow once someone calls in. You get an incoming call, and it will start the automated voice response. Next, we have the say and play message. What this does is basically you pick a message voice, male or female, and then you choose what you want the AI voice to say. And so here we have, hello, welcome to TBF. And this is exactly what the caller would hear once they open up the call, and they will hear hello, welcome to TBF. Now, alternatively, you have say a message. Alternatively, you have play a message as well. With this, you can upload your own MP3 file, and it will basically play whatever you want. Say you have a professional voiceover person that markets for your company, you can use that instead, or you want to record your own voice. I will say that the voice for the this action does come across a bit roboty. Like you can definitely tell that it is AI and is not a real person speaking to you, but you do have the option of the two. You can also choose how many times you want the message to loop. So oftentimes whenever you're hearing an automated voice message, it will loop sometimes if you wait too long just to repeat all the options available to you. But for this action, it will only play a message. For the next one, gather input on call, is essentially the exact same thing as the previous one. However, you can add certain conditions, advanced settings as well, and basically set a certain response based on the digit that they push during the call. So, say for example, you call in and they say, press 1 to contact sales, press 2 to contact accounting, press 3 for manager, whomever. This is what that does. It will play the message like normal, and then it will wait for a response from the caller. And for this, for IVR, it is very much recommended to use the if-else action. Now, if you don't remember what the if-else action is, down here, internal tools if else. This basically branches off the workflow into multiple different brackets, and it will change the response based on the caller's input. So here we have press 1, press 2, press 3, or they do not press anything at all. This is what the if else does. It will change lanes based on their response as well. And within this, you have, let me go back to the very beginning. You will have this branch right here. You can choose select. IVR gather is what you want to choose for this specific workflow. Then number 1, collect input, digits, is, and then you can choose the number that you want to use. In this case, we want to use number 1. And what that does is basically the caller will press 1. It will lead them to this next action, list of services. It will play a message. Here's the list of services which are being catered by our business, and numbered loops. And that will lead to the end of the workflow on this side. And then you can have different responses based on their different input. It is really up to you and your business what you are really going for and what services you provide. But this is a very bare bones blank slate recipe that we're working with. For none, we have basically a repeat of the previous line of actions. Normally, what you would use is the go-to action, but unfortunately, this does not work too well in regards to IVR actions or workflows. So it is very much recommended. What you do is you hit the 3 dots at the very beginning, copy, and then copy all actions from here before anything else, for whenever a caller does not respond whatsoever. And you can set the time limit that you want for it to go to the none section. So here we have stop gathering info after a certain amount of seconds. We have it set to 5 seconds. So if they do not input anything after 5 seconds, it will go into the none bracket. Next is connect to call. Connect to call is basically what it sounds like. It will connect the caller to a sales representative or one of your employees, whoever is assigned to that specific task, and it will connect them to that call. In here you have your different list of your entire list of sales representatives and which ones that you want to go to. Advanced settings, check for a voicemail. You can choose to record the call, and if they do not have any response, you can have it time out a certain amount of time. You can add a time limit to how long you want the call to be. So not too advanced, but is very much beginner friendly. Next is record voicemail. This is also exactly what it sounds like. So what you would normally do for this is you would add the save plain message, and then you would say something along the lines of, would you like to leave a voicemail? And please leave a voicemail after the beep. And then what you would do is add the record voicemail action after that. You can choose to play the beep, and pretty much that's it. And finally, one that is not completely necessary, but very much an option that some would like, is end call. Normally, during the IVR workflow it will stay active, the call will stay active until the caller basically hangs up on the call. With this, you can set to where it automatically be turned off and end the call prematurely. And that is all that there is to the IVR workflow actions and triggers. There are a lot of options available to you, but this is a very basic guide on what they do and their purpose. And I'll now hand it over to Mustafa. Is there any questions that we have so far, Mr.
Yes,
Powell?
Mr. Jeff.
That top right, test workflow. Will that test it for loops and that type of thing? Keep it from just the person being in an endless loop and voicemail purgatory or something?
I don't believe that. What we can do is we can set it up, publish it, and then try calling it by ourselves. That would be a better option to test out the workflow. And I don't understand. What do you mean by infinite loops?
Well, I mean, you could literally just keep dropping the person back. If you have a complicated IVR workflow, you could easily have someone who's trying to reach something and they could keep getting put back in the top and just endlessly loop and never
Absolutely.
reach it and never terminate at their destination. It's pretty easy to happen. That's why I
Yeah,
was curious if
absolutely.
that test workflow test for loops or something like that.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but if you have an option within every branch that says press 0 to go back to the top or start from the beginning, yes, you can have an infinite loop.
And maybe I missed it at the beginning. I'm assuming this also has after hours, weekends, holiday settings, and all that. Did I miss that, or did?
No, that is one of the very first settings that are basically one of the very first guides that we went over. Like,
Okay, sorry.
so, no, you're fine. Is in settings, go down communications, and you can set certain time zones, specific times. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This is for all workflows, not just for IVR.
And
Okay.
yes, Mr. Powell, yes, you could do that as well, where you can do an if-else statement, and if it's on a specific day or a specific holiday, it does a completely different IVR.
Any other questions before we move on?
And the reason I say that is because when you call companies, you see that you hear all the time. I should not see. You hear that they did not set up their IVR properly, and so especially holidays, weekends, and so on. All right, very
Yes,
good.
the best way in order to get past that problem is that the person who wants to create an IVR should have every part of their process listed down so that they are covering every branch, they are covering every possibility and every opportunity. So you have had a vast experience. Maybe you can tell us about your experience using IVRs, and we can tell you if such an intricate process could be mimicked by an IVR or not.
Well, I mean, they most of them, since they've gone graphical, look very similar to that. It looks like a workflow or whatever. So that's the biggest thing is somebody gets what they want done set up, but they're not thinking of all the other options on down the road that could happen, the other scenarios, the weekends, the after hours, the holidays, and so on.
Yeah, and one of the best examples that I saw for IVRs was that it had branches among branches. So, for example, you have firstly the language selection, then you have, for example, if you are running a marketing agency such as ourselves, could have a language option. Then we could have if someone was applying for a career or a job, or if someone is trying to look for services, or someone is just here to understand what we do. So they are just their intention is purely informational. Then based on that, we could have multiple branches. If the people who are applying for job, which part or which job are they interested in, they could select that, and then have layers upon layers. And what that would do is that the final person that is being connected on the call with that particular person would have a direct approach towards it. So, for example, if someone is in need of an automation service, and they have gone through the entire loop, and I'm the person who's been connected on the call with that person, I would know that this person needs help with automations. So I wouldn't have to waste 5 minutes or 10 minutes of my time trying to understand their problem. I would know immediately that they are here because they have an automation issue, and so on and so forth. So I just this is my personal thought that every industry should use IVRs immediately because it would save them a huge amount of time. It would save them a huge amount of resources, and by resources I mean man hours that would be otherwise have been spent on just picking up the calls, filtering out whether they are prospects or not, and then filtering out which type of prospect they are. So if people are more warmed up to the idea of using IVRs, it would be beneficial for them. But one thing is, for what I feel is the only con of this is the one drawback. If you are in an industry in which the callers prefer to speak to a human, only then using an IVR would not be advantageous for you. So maybe your leads are off with the old, aged people, the people who are, it's with someone who do not trust the other person so easily, or if it's someone that would want to speak to a human so that they can have that factor of trust involved. So if your, I, sorry, yeah, Mr. Jeff.
No, go ahead. Hey, well then, let me ask you. Oh, I don't want to take up a lot of the time. How many other features in this call were you going to cover? Otherwise, I have some more questions. But if you have a lot more to cover, I'll be quiet.
No. We have covered everything we had to. That was it.
Okay. Well, then, is there a? Then that means you could also set up internal hotkeys that are not mentioned in the IVR, so that if you have staff or you have clients or whatever, and they can know how to get past the IVR quickly.
Yeah,
That would be
absolutely.
an option. And then also, it has the speech to text if the person wants to answer with speech. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you mean? What are you referring to? Speech to text? If someone is talking
In
something
other words,
about,
they don't have to push one. They can say one, or they can say sales. Does it have that?
Cohen, would you like to answer that question?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Can the person, does it have speech to text? Instead of saying press 1 for sales, can they say sales, and it will transfer them to the sales department?
Speech to text.
No, from what I could tell, there is not a way to do that. Now, can you integrate it to do that? Possibly with just content AI or some
Yeah,
type of chat GPT.
yeah, you'd have to have a
wherein
third party.
You would have to have a third party at that point. But I don't think the software itself has that capability at this moment. Now, with a lot of the updates that are coming through the software, yes, that will be definitely something that we can see in the near future. But as of right now, without a third party involved, no, you cannot.
All right.
I would say that the closest thing would be what I was talking about earlier, the MP3 file upload of your own voice, but that's the closest that you can possibly get.
All right. Very good. I'm sure they'll integrate it themselves, but that's good that you can, because I've even noticed that a lot of people are integrating a lot of the voice already, but obviously that's third party. That's not in the canned package, where they're actually having the talk off with the person. In fact, so anyways, I'm very interesting. This is a good lesson today.
Yeah. And on that note, we have completed our entire series of automations. So we have covered the triggers, we have covered the actions, we have covered some of the recipes which were important. And so this series is done. From next week, we'll be starting on something new, something more informative, and hopefully something more exciting. So thank you for being an amazing audience, and I hope to see you next week as well.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.